As a sea kayaker, we're going to spend the majority of our time propelling our sea kayak forwards. It therefore makes sense that we spend a little bit of time and energy working on a reasonably efficient, nice forwards paddle stroke. In this section of the course, we're going to look at developing a forwards paddle stroke that will help most recreational sea kayakers feel a little bit more efficient when they're out on journeys. We're also going to have a section of the course looking at Greenland's paddle strokes. And for those of you that are interested in going fast and covering distances quickly and efficiently with a bit of speed, we're going to have a performance forwards paddle stroke, looking at using wing paddles. For most of us, we want a forwards paddle stroke that feels relaxed, efficient, so that we can paddle all day without becoming exhausted and becoming tired, and ultimately so we can wake up the next day and do it all again. A nice forwards paddle stroke is really going to help us out as a sea kayaker. As mentioned, we spend most of the time propelling our sea kayak forwards, so we want to be able to do it efficiently without feeling exhausted at the end of the day or potentially picking up little niggling injuries. With a few tweaks in our technique and just thinking a little bit about what we're doing with our body and our blade, we can make our forwards paddle stroke that much more efficient, and it means we're just going to feel more comfortable paddling throughout the day. We're not going to become quite as fatigued, and we're going to enjoy our time on the water that much more. It's important to remember that we're all different sizes and shapes, and we'll develop a slightly different forwards paddling technique. The important thing is that we develop a technique that works for us, feels comfortable, and as mentioned, is efficient. Our forwards paddling technique might also change with the conditions, the environment, or what it is we want our sea kayak to do. For example, we might be punching out through waves and we may choose to use a slightly faster, higher angle, powerful stroke. Or perhaps we're just having a mellow, cruisy journeying the flat, so we're using a slightly slower cadence, more relaxed stroke. So for this section of the course, we're going to be looking at a forwards paddle stroke that we think will help or be appropriate for most recreational sea kayakers that want to go on a nice journey along the coastline and paddle efficiently, and like we mentioned before, not feeling completely exhausted and tired at the end of the day. I think it's really important that we differentiate a little bit between what we would call a high performance paddle stroke and a more recreational stroke. So by a performance paddle stroke, I'm thinking about disciplines like marathon paddlers and K1 paddlers and sprint paddlers, where they're trying to eke out marginal gains of performance, where they want to be, they're breaking records, they're trying to go as fast as they can. So when we watch a performance paddler like a marathon or a K1 paddler or a sprint paddler, we'll notice that they're working really efficiently and really driving the boat. Lots of body rotation, really driving with their legs. I think it's important that as a sea kayaker interested in touring and journeying, we can take some of those really efficient techniques like the body rotation, but just maybe tone it down a little bit so it's more appropriate for us. What we've got to remember is that a marathon or K1 or performance sprint paddler will be somebody that does a lot of training and will have a very strong core and a really strong muscle group that's going to help them with this stroke. For most of us, myself included, if I paddle like a marathon paddler all day, really using my core, it's not going to be super comfortable. However, I think there's a few key components that we can take from a performance paddle stroke and apply it to our everyday stroke that's really going to help us. So again, things like this body rotation and leg drive and distance between me and my paddle are going to become really, really relevant. So again, we're going to look at these in these lessons and see some of the top bits that we can do to make our forwards paddle stroke more efficient for us. So it's also worth mentioning that a sea kayak, much like the one I'm paddling here and perhaps similar to the ones you guys are paddling, will have an optimum hull speed at which it wants to move and cruise along quite comfortably. We can make the boat go faster, but the only way we're going to do that is by working really hard and breaking that optimum hull speed. To get the boat moving fast, I'm going to be working really hard, pulling super hard on the paddle, and it's not going to be super efficient. A K1 or a marathon or a sprint boat, these really narrow V'd hull boats, will have a much higher hull speed, so you can get them moving much quicker. For us, speed isn't always the most important thing. Find that optimum hull speed of the boat, and then what we want to be doing is just paddling a nice comfortable cadence, paddling efficiently so we can keep the boat moving through the water all day. So let's start looking into this forwards paddle stroke in a bit more detail, and in the next lesson we're just going to start you off by looking at the whole stroke.